Okay, I have myself, Annie Cathy, Allison France, Andrew Chorney, Ann Hughes, Brian West, Jason Emery, Jason Hauser, John Hart, Kayla Talbot, Kyla Lennox, Melissa Fisher, Rich Maricelli, Sarah Bell, Violet Plummer, Connor McCauley, Joe Dennert, MCAT, Paul Filicetti, and I have somebody on the phone with a 208 prefix. Can I grab who that is? You can hit *6 to unmute.
Yes, can you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Hello?
Yes, can I get your name for roll call?
Yes, my name is Scott Krajak. I'm just part of the O'Keefe project that's on the consent agenda, so I just thought I would listen in. I don't have anything to comment.
Okay, thank you. And it
Thank
looks
you.
like we'll have the 3 commissioners. Did I miss anybody else out there?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I can't tell, we can't see what you guys can see in this room, where all we see is ceiling tiles, so apologies, or let us know if we should change anything.
Looks good. I can see both the commissioners, so.
Okay, great. And Josh is literally just, he's coming. He has the ear, he can hear us. So is there any public comment on items not on the agenda?
Well, I'll just chime in here. This is Dave. So all 3 of us were back in Washington, D.C. last week for the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference. We had many additional meetings with members of Congress and otherwise. And one thing I just want to note for folks, if you had not heard already, I had the chance to meet with Federal Railroad Administration and received word that the North Coast Hiawatha route through Missoula, Montana will be included in the nationwide study to look at restoring discontinued Amtrak routes. So something to look forward to.
Huge deal, huge victory.
Yes, great.
Is Martin on the call here?
We left him at the, Connor's here.
Connor's here. Connor, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
I just wondered if you had any questions on this. There's I think it was $15 million set aside by the federal government to do these studies, for the plural, and our route is going to be included in that. This is a really big deal.
So that is and excuse me for not knowing the trail routes better, is that the Northern Line Trail or is that the one that runs through southern Montana?
This is what we see running right through the heart of Missoula, Montana. So this is the route that would connect the southern tier of Montana to Chicago and Seattle.
How long?
You should jump with Dave and
yeah,
you guys should have a real conversation.
Yeah, because this is super exciting.
Talk to me anytime. 2,200 mile route.
I'll set it up with Allison.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, thanks Connor for covering this, because it is super exciting for us to be included in this.
Transformational.
Any additional public comments on items on the agenda?
We had, you said, met with our congressional delegation, and we were well received.
Yes, we were.
On to the consent agenda. 6 items here. I forget protocol. We don't have to read them aloud. They're up there.
I don't believe so. I think I would move that we approve the consent agenda. Unless Chris or anyone else has a different theory of how to approach this.
Well, commissioners, this is John Hart with the County Attorney's Office. And I did want to clarify one thing and then say just a little bit about these improvements agreements. So consent agenda item number 4, which states that it's an improvements agreement for West Point Phase 1 subdivision. That's not on this consent agenda. You all approved that improvements agreement in November of last year. So it's making an appearance on this agenda. Nobody knows why, but I wanted to make sure that you're not going to approve that because it's already been approved. And then what I'd like to say about the other three, which is agenda item 3, 5, and 6. These are 3 separate improvements agreements, and they're on the consent agenda, and that's fine. Perhaps that's fine, but I want you to know that the aggregate total of the amount of improvements that are being deferred through letters of credit is almost $1.5 million for these 3. And you know, that's 7 figures is a big number. And what I also want you to know that there are currently several $1 million worth of outstanding improvements that have come to us through improvements agreements that you've approved already. In the next few months, you're going to see additional improvements agreements, which will add several $1 million to that total. And then the 3 that are on the consent agenda today are another $1.5 million. And I mention that because even though each one of these improvements agreements are backed by a letter of credit from a bank, and so in reality, the backstop for these is a bank. And, you know, you would think that unless the bank goes insolvent, that we being Missoula County is adequately secured for these improvements agreements. We're still talking about a lot of money. And so I just wanted to put that out there on your radar. And frankly, just also so the public knows, there is a provision in the Subdivision and Platting Act. It's at 76-3-507, subpart 4, and it does allow the governing body to require a percentage of improvements or specific types of improvements be completed before allowing an improvements agreement. Now, the Missoula County subdivision regulations do not provide a certain percentage, or they don't delineate certain types of improvements that we would require to be completed before we consider an improvements agreement. But I have been having discussions with the planning department, and I suspect that at some time in the future, when we bring some revised subdivision regulations for your consideration, it will likely include requiring certain percentages and or certain types of improvements to be completed before Missoula County will consider an improvements agreement. So having said all that, I have reviewed each of these 3 improvements agreements. Obviously, you see the RCA. I approve those. I recommend that you approve them. And if you have any questions about them, of course, I'm willing to answer them. But I did just want to sort of get that out there today during this admin meeting.
Hey,
Well,
John,
thank you.
sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I so appreciate that you've said that. Go ahead. Yeah.
A question. So, John, this isn't about any specific subdivision improvements agreement, just generally about how they work, if you're okay with that. So let's say a developer, none of the wonderful developers who we have here today, but some less reputable developer, enters into a subdivision improvements agreement, gets a line of credit, a letter of credit from a bank, and then into the process says, oh man, cost of materials is so high, labor is so high, the market's iffy right now, I'm just gonna wait a few years. And they don't follow through. They don't ask the bank to open up that line of credit so they can hire contractors to do the subdivision. Basically, they just don't do anything. What's our position there, knowing that they may have sold property, sold lots, or at least told people those lots were going to be available?
So the value of the letter of credit and the contractual agreement that is an improvements agreement allows Missoula County then to go to that bank, you know, following certain protocol, and the bank is required to pay to Missoula County the amount of money that it will cost to complete the infrastructure that the developer has walked away from or is refusing to complete. That's sort of the foundation of these improvements agreements. So that's our security in entering into these, is that if the developer walks away, we can go to that bank who has given us essentially a letter saying we have this amount of cash to be used by Missoula County under these circumstances. And that would be one of the circumstances on which we would be authorized to go to that bank and collect on the letter of credit.
So how do we monitor these things?
So the way we monitor these is it's teamwork between myself, Annie Cathy, and Brent O'Connor. So assuming you approve each of these improvements agreement today, I'll send an email to Brent and Annie and asking Annie to docket 90 days or sometimes 60 days, it depends on which side of the bed I got up on, a deadline prior to the expiration of the improvements agreement, so that with sufficient time, Brent O'Connor can investigate, contact the developer, contact contractors, see what the status is of the improvements, and see if they're going to get done. And if they're not going to get done, then we have plenty of time to take the steps that are necessary in order to call on the letter of credit from the bank.
Great, thank you. That's a great explanation.
John, just a follow-up on the scenario where the developer, the unscrupulous developer walks away from the project, and we then enter into conversations with the lending institution. What about the scenario where construction costs go up a third over the period of time between when we execute this today and when we're trying to claw back the money to
the Argentinian example, otherwise known as the build grant?
Yes, that would be the example. Are we as the capital we in terms of Missoula County taxpayers on the hook for covering the difference?
We potentially could be on the hook for covering the difference. A couple of things that we require in these improvements agreements, and they're in both of, are all three of the ones that are before you today. Well, first off, I like to see the improvements being guaranteed to be completed within, say, 12 to 24 months, 1 to 2 years. So that sort of limits the amount of, the rise in materials and goods. But as we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, material costs can skyrocket in a much shorter period of time than that. But that's one thing we do. We try to limit the duration of them. The second thing we do, and these are in all the improvements agreements today, we require a 25% contingency over the engineer's estimate of probable cost. So for each one of these agreements, in other words, there's been an estimate of the cost that it will take to complete these improvements. It's been approved by Brent O'Connor at Public Works, and then over and above that has been added in a 25% contingency fee. And for instance, I'm looking at the one from O'Keefe Ranch Estates. And so, for instance, with that one, the estimate that was approved by Public Works is $344,475. But added to that is an $86,116 contingency. And then for this one in particular, there's another 7% added on as an estimate for surveying and civil engineering costs. And so those additional contingencies bring the total to $454,707. So we do bake in a little bit And then, not just a little bit. I mean, 25% calculates to real money. But yes, Dave, if the costs were more than the 25%, or we just had some ridiculous amount of inflation, Missoula County is taking on some potential risk here. And that's why I occasionally lose about 5 minutes of sleep at night when I think about how many millions of dollars we have in the pipeline right now, and then how many more millions are going to be coming to you over the course of the next few months.
Well, can I
Yeah.
ask one more?
Go ahead.
So John, for a developer, what does having this subdivision improvements agreement in place allow them to do that they otherwise would not be able to do?
Well, it allows them to file a final plat for all of a subdivision or a certain phase of a subdivision, and without completing all of the required infrastructure that was required at the time of preliminary approval. And so, from a business standpoint, it allows them to start selling lots and generating cash flow.
I just wanted to hear you say that out loud.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, generating cash flow that then, in theory, they're using to complete the infrastructure within the time period that's required.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Those are good explanations.
I guess I would amend my motion to move items 1 through 3 and 5 and 6 on the consent agenda, because apparently we've already dealt with item 4.
Right. And I will second that.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on to action items. Thank you so much,
Commissioners,
John.
thanks for listening to me this morning.
No, and
Thanks,
welcome
John.
back.
Good stuff.
It's good to see you. Action items. First one, who do we have? Oh, Melissa Fisher and Chris Lansbury.
Hello.
Hey,
So what we have in front of us for the federal building today is the interlocal agreement between the city and the county that outlines how we would work together through the design and pre-construction phase of the federal building project. And just a reminder, we have an agreement in place with the city to jointly pursue ownership, and we're tentatively set to perhaps acquire the building in fall of 2022. So this agreement outlines a 50-50 cost split in most general situations for the federal building through this design phase. It outlines the joint decision-making and oversight structure with a day-to-day management team with city and county folks, as well as oversight team for both cities and county. In this agreement, the county is the contracting agent for a design and also for the construction partner when we get there. So that's what we have. And this agreement was approved by City Council last week.
oh, great.
All right. That's a great thing. I'm ready to make a motion here. The board to approve the interlocal agreement with the city for the design phase of the federal building.
I will second that.
Any further comments? You think, when can we get it done?
Yeah. I think we could save money by not having the self-tinting windows. That's write that one down.
We'll have mini blinds.
We just came back from the airport and saw their self-tinting windows.
Incredible.
Incredible. The new airport is spectacular.
But any further comments on design phase for the federal building? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks.
Kayla, thanks so much, Mel.
Good morning.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It's all you.
Okay. I am here to request the board chair to sign the termination agreement between Missoula County and the YWCA Missoula to for the grant agreement for the rapid rehousing grant through the continuum of care award that we received from HUD. I've been in front of you guys several times about this. This is the final step in removing the county's responsibilities for managing this grant. This is the actual agreement between the Y and Missoula County. So this is just the termination agreement for that.
Okay.
Okay, I would move that we authorize the chair to sign the termination agreement.
I'll second that.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Junk vehicle program, everyone's favorite.
Loves the junk vehicle program.
Yay, Shannon.
Yeah, love talking about the junk vehicle program. So this is just something that has to be done every year. We have to ask the commissioners to sign the vendor invoice. So the way that this is set up is that we submit our budget to DEQ. We're eligible for $1.40 per light vehicle registered in the county. And so we submit a budget that uses all that money, and then they send us the vendor invoice, and we have to have you sign it before we can get the money. This year is a little different in that we're able to put any funds that we don't spend into a capital improvement fund at the end of the year up to $200,000. We have $200,000 in that fund now, so we can't put any more money into it. So we are returning some money to DEQ this year because we didn't spend it last year, and it actually it's subtracted from this year's grant, and it's really what keeps us going, until we get the money anyway. So it works out. DEQ actually does depend on some of this money coming back from some counties to be able to keep running their portion of the junk vehicle program. But we try to use as much money as we can in an efficient and responsible manner. And I will tell you that we do have plans. We're working with facilities to make some improvements to the junk vehicle yard. We need to crush our vehicles. We have like 350 vehicles in the yard right now, and that's going to happen this summer. And so we do expect next construction season that we're going to make improvements to the fence and to the grading and surface of the yard. And to the junk vehicle facility itself, and that'll bring down the capital improvement fund again, and then we'll be able to put money into it again for future projects like this. I'll also tell you, because I can't help but tell you that we do spend a portion of the junk vehicle fund on junk mobile homes and non-motorized vehicles. We're allowed to spend 20% up to 20% of our budget every year on that. It's a temporary law. We got it extended last session. We got to go back next session, but it passed unanimously last session. So, and so we do that. We spend all the money that we can on that. And last year we were able to get rid of 10 junk mobile homes and 8 non-motorized, like junk pull behind trailers that had been abandoned or were no longer wanted. So we've made good use of that. So my request is that you sign, or have the chair sign, the vendor invoice to DEQ for $168,000 and change.
Right. I would move that the board approve the vendor invoice with DEQ.
I'll second that.
Any further comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Shannon.
I'm
Thanks,
so
Shannon.
glad this, I hope this program is permanent. Or rather, I hope that one day we'll get to a point where we don't actually have to have such programs.
That would be great.
But thank you. And, Jason Hauser.
Good morning, all. So I've got the next two. They're both control upgrades for the detention center. You guys did one about 2 weeks ago for me. This is just continuation of the same work. We kind of broke it down into different contracts to make it easier for us to track and bill out, and basically track and bill out, being able to hold the vendor accountable. The first one is an upgrade to the BMS system that will help us monitor air control, or air quality inside and outside of the detention center, allowing us to fluctuate the amount of fresh air that we bring in and out, which will make the facility much more energy efficient, along with some other things. And the second one is all the control wiring that goes along with the new fan wall upgrades that we're doing out there. So that's what we have.
Glad to hear it's moving along.
Yeah.
I'd move items 4 and 5.
I'll second that.
Fan wall forever. Okay, any further public comment or comment? Items 4 and 5. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Thanks, all. Bye.
Eric Dixon. MDT changes in classifications of
Yeah.
roads.
Yes, good afternoon. So this is a, I don't want to say something that we don't have a lot of control over, but this is something that's handled at the statewide level by MDT. You know, there are federal requirements for maintaining road classification list or inventory of the roads in the state. And, you know, the last time that MDT reviewed their roads was in 1992. And so, you know, over 30 years later, there's a number of changes that have occurred both in development patterns and road road development. So this is a statewide effort that they undertook to look at the existing road networks and come up with an updated road classification that is reflective of the current traffic patterns, the current land development in those areas. So they went through an almost 2-year-long process and made the recommendations that you received. We looked at those, didn't have a lot of comments. I shared those with Andrew Hagemeyer at CAPS and with Aaron Wilson at the MPO, and we didn't receive a lot of complaints or comments on those. So we would recommend that these maps and the table be signed to acknowledge that those changes are being recommended by MDT.
Yeah, go ahead. Josh has a question for you.
Eric, how would these changes in classification affect a typical person who's living in Missoula County?
The biggest local impact that we have is that, you know, the road classification may influence how subdivision improvements are required. You know, if you have a road that's classified as a local road, you know, you have a lesser standard. If with these changes, you know, which there are not many that went up, I think most of them, you know, that went from a higher classification to a lower. So it's really not much of an influence to the everyday road user. It might be for the developers that would be contemplating a subdivision and what improvements might be necessary for their development. You know, these are mainly used for allocation of federal funds to like the national highway system or, you know, the roads that are used in the MPO where you have the surface transportation funds. So whenever you have a TTAC or a TPCC action for improvements on those roads, you know, those are already in the system. They already receive funding. The only roads that we have that would have any benefit from a potential change are like South Avenue, Clements Road, and 3rd Street, parts of Mullen Road that are not even county maintained, and then you know, a few streets in East Missoula where those are considered federal aid urban routes. So those are just roads that are classified as a collector in an urban area. So those roads are eligible for federal funds, which MDT initiates those projects. We've used those several times over the years for overlays on Clements, South and 3rd. We received chip seal last year on those same roads. So those roads don't change much. And so, you know, for the everyday resident in Missoula County, I don't see a huge impact to these changes.
Thanks.
I got a question. Eric, so our action today is acknowledging the proposed changes. What would happen if we didn't do this?
We
I don't
refuse.
know.
The changes would happen nonetheless.
Well, and that's why I say, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we are being railroaded by MDT and saying you're taking these changes we've recommended. You know, it went through a year-long planning process, or a couple years, I believe. And I don't know how often those internal reviews were a public process. You know, we were notified back in 2019 when they began the process. So I really don't know what would happen at this point if we had a concern or an issue with any of their recommendations. I suppose it would be a conversation to be held with MDT and discuss what concerns we may have.
Okay, thanks.
It's my turn.
Yeah.
All right, then I move that the board approve the chair to sign the MDT documents acknowledging proposed changes in functional classification.
Second.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Eric. Emily Brock with GMAX.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are
Well,
you?
yourself.
Okay.
Good, hanging in there. Cold.
Yeah.
So I am here today to bring you a GMAX amendment with Jackson Contractor Group in the amount of $499,000, $400,099, 262 for hardscape improvements. The project includes removing the chain link fence from South Avenue.
Oh, we love that fence. Isn't it historic?
Yeah.
I think it's historic.
How are
And
people gonna know where
replacing
they are?
it with a half wall and transparent fencing to allow neighboring businesses and passerbys to enjoy the historic buildings and plaza while ensuring that children, livestock, and horses are separated from the 30,000 vehicles that drive through that intersection every day. And you can see a rendering of the fence, the design of the fence in your board packet. Shoring up the historic light posts along Mercantile Alley. We had previously purchased some lighting that is designed to be dangled between them. Unfortunately, when we hung it, it was too heavy and it started pulling those posts out of the ground. So we put a hold on that project, and so we're going to shore up those light posts so that we can do that. But the lighting's already been purchased. So a new driveway on Fairway. The Fairway Drive is new, but the driveway is still old. And so it's still just, crumbling asphalt. So a new driveway there and corresponding sidewalks that will connect to the newly installed drive and the newly renovated Home Arts building to meet ADA requirements, and then eventually to the Rocky Mountain Gardens and Exploration Center. And so this is also really cool, and I put it in the board packet. We're going to put a new archway over that entrance that reflects the history of the Missoula County Fairgrounds. So it's actually really similar to the historic archway that was there. If you guys want, I can pull that up.
Yeah.
That'd be great to see.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of cool. Item files. And I will do that as soon as I get it up here. So first I'll show you the historic one. So this is the not offering. Hold on. There we go. So can you guys see that?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
there we go.
Oh, great.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the historic entrance. And now I'm going to pull up the design, and I'll show you, since I'm last on the agenda, what the project will look like from the street. All right. Are you with me?
I get the whole.
Can you guys see it? See it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you make it a bit bigger, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger in each one. This one, I'll actually scroll down to the next page. This is kind of a.
That's fantastic.
What's
isn't
the
that cool?
colored piece? Maybe I'm not, I don't understand what's to the right of the welcome sign.
Okay, so that's a public art that already exists.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And who's doing the archway?
A&E is designing it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and so this fencing is cool. See how it's like a wall, and then on top of it is these X's here. See those X's
Yep.
No. What?
here?
They're in the,
fence.
Oh,
In
in
the
the
fence?
fence. Yeah. Yes.
So the design guidelines called out that X pattern specifically because it comes up so much in the historic. You guys don't need to see my screen there, but that X pattern comes up all the time in old pictures of the fairgrounds.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
great.
Yeah, I'll show you. If you look back on the, it's even in the picture I just showed you. So if you see that X there,
Oh, yes, now I do. I was looking at the one on the left and I just thought it was like, stuff was being piled there.
yeah,
But now
so the design guidelines for the fairgrounds calls out this X pattern, and you can also see that they're on the commercial building now in the doors.
yeah.
This X pattern is actually, the historic plaza actually is in an X.
Oh,
Nice.
got it.
Or
Thank
concrete.
you. Yeah.
So Emily, in the historic one, the sign says Missoula County Fair, and in the modern one, it says Missoula Fairgrounds. Can you describe the change and why? I'm not saying I don't like it or like it, just asking a question.
Well, it's just a branding thing. People recognize the fairgrounds as a year-round asset. And the fairgrounds has such a strong brand. Other businesses in Midtown, you can hear on the radio, you'll hear businesses when they say where their business are, they almost always in Midtown will say how it relates to the fairground. And so the fairgrounds, that sign was originally for the fair, but now the fairgrounds has so many more uses. So, yeah, we have, it's used every day. So so this is the last project for phase one. This is it. This is the end of our money. The rest of it will be just small in-house managed projects that will be the general on, and we'll just work directly with the subs. Yeah, so this wraps it up. This will tie together the modern Rocky Mountain Exploration Center with the historic plaza and the historic fairgrounds, and it just ties it all in a really nice way. Amy did a beautiful job with it.
Wait, and Emily, what were you saying about the renovations of the bathroom? That's we're doing ourselves or in-house?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And what does that mean?
It means we don't, so like if Jackson Contractor Group manages a project, 30% of that cost goes to Jackson for all of their work managing, and with a project like Rocky Mountain Gardens, it's a huge project, and it actually does cost that much just to keep everybody and everything happening at this, it takes dozens of people, to make sure that wires aren't crossed, literally. With working with so many different subs. Well, if we're doing a smaller project, we don't need to pay that overhead. We will work directly with the subcontractors and manage those subcontractors one at a time.
Okay, I think I initially just saw that and I was thinking that it was our facilities crew that was like renovating the bathrooms, but no, we're just managing the contract. Thank you.
Well, sometimes we do. So sometimes, so the fairgrounds is managed, the fairgrounds maintenance is not managed by the facilities crew. The fairgrounds is managed by the fairgrounds maintenance crew. And sometimes we do our own projects in-house, like those beautiful historic benches that you see all over the fairgrounds were done in-house. We do sometimes do things in-house. We did the fair office that was done by the fairgrounds team, and we did that in-house.
Okay.
So sometimes we work with facilities, and in the case of the bathrooms and building 15, we will, and sometimes the fairgrounds team says it. It just kind of depends on who has the expertise and the capacity. But it does save us hundreds of thousands of dollars.
All right, I would move that we approve the GMAX amendment.
I'll second that.
Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emily.
Congratulations, Emily.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Thank you.
I made a bet with somebody in 2015, that I would get the chain link fence around the fairgrounds removed within 2 years. Did not win that bet, but I'm still happy to come down.
But it still happens.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you're not just like managing expectations, we're just doing the fencing on South Avenue. The fencing on Russell will have to come with the phase 2 projects that are associated with that sidewalk.
Great.
Okay, a teaser.
Yeah, thank you. Correspondence, road court. Letter of support. Who do we have here?
That's me again.
Okay.
This is Kayla Talbert. I chatted with you guys about the road court grant for Justice Court, and this is just a letter of support that we have written stating that you support the continuing funding of the program.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're happy to do that.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we've already signed this letter for Cold Springs.
Oh, that's what that project is?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is there anyone here to speak on this? The next one?
This is the Chambers
The
project.
Chambers project, yeah.
And were they applying for a specific grant or something, or are we just writing them a generic letter of support?
It seemed like
I don't recall.
they're asking for some care or ARPA support.
Oh, okay.
It's from the state of Montana.
That they're approaching the state and we're writing them a letter. of
We're
support.
just saying that we're supportive
That is
of the effort to
Great.
partner. But is there anyone to speak to it on this one? Okay, discussion items. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great afternoon. Stay warm.
All right, goodbye.
Thanks.